Well, good morning everybody. Today is, or what hopefully will be the last day or thereabouts on this job. When I last posted anything, I was just in the process of fitting the water blade, which you can see I've fitted. I had to leave the cement to go off before I could then lay the next course of stonework above it. Really important that once this is fixed and nice and level, that you don't do anything which might potentially cause it to move. It's essential that this is absolutely dead level. If it's not, it becomes very, very apparent by the shape of the film of water as it pours over. I'm really happy with that. Nice and level, projecting nicely into the pond. The blade looks central to the wall and the fall itself looks central to the pond. There's a nice sound without being too obtrusive. You can see I've got the light running inside there as well, just as a demo to see what it's like, make sure it's working. So I'm just going to clean up the stonework again and get rid of some of the stain and the cement with a wire brush. And I now need to build up another course or two of natural stone before I finish up with the coping stone on top. We've got a few toys that we're going to be using as well. We've got an Awaza in Scenario FM Master 3, so we can get all the bits and pieces connected up remotely so that we can control them with the fob. And we've got some very cool lighting, the Awaza Aquatics Power LED sets, which are really fantastic LEDs for ponds. Incredibly bright, a lovely colour of light as well. I'm going to incorporate one as an uplighter to illuminate the wall and to illuminate behind the curtain, and another submersed light which will end up illuminating the entire pond at night time. So that'll look really nice. Cheers. Right, I've just been measuring up and cutting my last coping stone. I've got two Indian sandstone 30 by 30 squares either side, and then the gap in the centre I've had a 600 by 30 which I've just cut down slightly to fit. Now, when I'm cutting stonework and slabs, you don't really want to see the smooth cut edge, especially on a natural stone slab like this, where you've got a very obvious riven edge where it's been guillotined, and then suddenly a very, very smooth stark cut where I've cut it with the grinder. Now you can get away with normally cutting on the reverse, cutting halfway or 3/4 of the way through the stone, and then using a hammer and a chisel and just breaking off that piece. And then when you turn it over, you'll have a nice sort of rough riven edge where the stone has been snapped off. But occasionally you can end up breaking the slab in the process. And as this is the only one I've got, and I want to make sure I get it right first time, I can't afford to waste anything. I've actually cut through from the surface, and I've now got this smooth edge to deal with. So just to try and roughen this up and make it look a little bit more in keeping with the rest of the stone, I'm simply going to go around with my mallet and just roughen up the smooth cut edge. The corners particularly need to be kind of knocked around a bit. And now, when I point this up, obviously the majority of this is concealed with mortar, but that very top visible strip which is going to be pointed is now going to look like the rest of the stone. A little tip there. Right, I'm in the throes of rigging up the pond lighting. So we're using here the Awaza Aquatics Power LED sets, and these are fantastic. A very, very nice LED spotlight with a lovely colour very reminiscent of sort of an older traditional halogen bulb, so it's quite a nice soft light. It's not a, you know, a really stark, cold white LED, and it works very nicely with ponds. Actually, it's lovely with natural kind of stonework because it's very soft on this, so that will really pick out the colours on the stonework nicely. What's nice about these light sets are that the transformer is submersible. So this transformer or this hub will sit in the pond, and you can power up to 4 individual lights from this. And that means that you've only got one flex from the pond exiting the pond that needs to be plugged in. Everything else is neat and tidy and concealed within the pond. You can extend the flex that comes attached to the LED light. So this comes as standard with 5 meters. So you've got a 5 meter stretch between where you position this light in the pond and the transformer, which is submersed in the pond. But if you need to extend that, you can then get extension cables that just plug directly into this and extend off. I think you can get up to a 15 meter extension. Certainly a 10, but I think a 15 as well. So if you've got a very big pond, you'll be able to span quite large areas with 4 separate lights. Now this is the kit, which is the Lunar Power LED Set 1, which includes 1 light, 1 length of flex, and the submersible transformer. And then in addition, I have added a 2nd light and a 2nd length of flex to join onto this. And the idea is I'm going to have one in the pond acting as an uplighter behind the curtain that's going to illuminate some of the stonework here, and another one just positioned in the pond, probably down here facing towards the house underwater. So when the pond is clear at night time, the pond is just going to glow. Very simple to install these. It comes supplied with some blanking covers that simply unscrew from the transformer, like so. And these are, well, they're important to hang on to these because this is what is going to blank this off if you wanted to create a waterproof connection by not utilising all 4 of these sockets. So very important that you keep those. And you'll see it's kind of impregnated with a rubber within this socket, and that's the same on the end of the lead socket as well. Hang on a sec. There we go. So this will plug directly into the transformer to power the light. And again, just inside this, you've got this lovely sort of rubber material that as you screw this down to the transformer, it will expand and compress and make a nice watertight seal. And over the years, I've used lots and lots of different makes of lights. Sorry Blagden, sorry Hoselock, they've always failed. The Awaza lights are the only ones I've ever had that have worked underwater and haven't allowed water ingress. So you kind of get what you pay for. So Dave is in the throes here of wiring up and connecting up the filtration system, the FM master, taking power supply from the original junction box, which was there mounted on the fence that Dave has now kindly covered. Move your leg, Dave. There you go. So that's the power supply box. That's taking power from the house via an armoured cable, and into this the old pump and the UV was wired into. Frustratingly, and I see this quite frequently, the UV and the pump had been wired directly into that, and it was all taken off of one switch. So there was no way of independently turning on and off the pump from the UV. And that's a bit of a mistake, because if you get a problem with the UV, for example, you can't isolate and switch that off without also turning off your pond pump, which isn't ideal. So now we've taken the power supply from that box to the Awaza FM master, which is going to go and stand in the corner over here. And that's going to give us the benefit of being able to individually control each pond appliance separately via the remote control, which is handy. Dave's just pulling the cables through the conduit here. Annoyingly, Awaza, if you're listening, the cable length that you get on the transformer from the Lunaqua Power LED is woefully short. We've got 10 metres of cable or 5 metres of cable within the pond that attaches from the lamp to the transformer, and obviously in a tiny pond like this we only need a couple of metres. And then from the transformer, which is submersed, to what will be the power supply, which is the main flex, the 3-core cable, you only get 2 metres supplied. And that means the transformer needs to be either very close to the edge of the pond, or it needs to be brought to the surface. And if you've got a 4-foot deep pond, for example, you've lost 4 feet of cable already. So frequently I have to end up joining and attaching onto this with a weatherproof cable connector, and often just to extend the flex by another metre or two. Awaza, please, please, please extend this and put 5 metres of cable on or so. That would be so much more usable. Anyway, gripes over. Filtration system has been moved, so it's a little bit more concealed behind the walling here, but still accessible. And obviously once the soil is banked up and a few rocks are put around and it's planted up, this is going to be less visible. One could also put over a fake rock cover over this, which will screen it a little bit more, still utilising the original valves so that we can bypass the cascade if we want to and just have water entering the pond via a separate feed. So we're making progress. So the light simply marries up with the socket, plug and play, and screws down to create a nice firm watertight join. And I know it seems a little bit, well, a bit concerning really, having the transformer and everything submersed in the pond, but honestly I've never had a single one of these fail. They are very, very good. If you want to, of course, you can run these as external lights, and you can house the transformer out of the pond. There's no fear of it overheating if it's not submersed. And you can use the lights as garden lighting as well. Expensive garden lighting, but very, very good. So I'm just making sure these are nice and tight. Perfect. Now the light itself has a sort of a ratchet fixing so that you can angle and position the light. 2 little stainless steel Allen screws on the side, so you can loosen that up if you want to and then tighten it and clamp it into position. What I like to do is the garden stake that it comes with. So you could mount this in the ground and then you can secure the base of the light to the stake, and then you can angle that and position that. And frequently when I'm building ponds, I'll chop this down into half and I'll make sure this is secured somewhere in the stonework so that the light itself can then be mounted onto it, swiveled around, pivoted and locked into position. But in this instance, I'm either going to screw this directly to a brick or a stone in the pond and just angle it upwards, because the pond is lovely and clear. These are really, really bright lights. I mean, it's 5.8 watts of total wattage, but it's the equivalent of a 50-watt light bulb. So it's really, really bright, and it emits almost 600 lumens of light. So actually, if I had this mounted quite close to the surface, it's probably going to overpower the LED within the stainless steel water blade, and I don't want to do that. I just want to have some nice soft lighting on the stonework. So originally I was going to cut off nice and neatly just this little round plastic end, and then you can sand it down smooth, and then you can drill a hole through that, or you could even glue it and just fix that to anything you want to, and then secure your light directly onto it. In fact, again, Awaza, if you're listening, it would be great if you supplied just that end or a couple of those ends in the box with a hole already screwed into it, so that you can just secure that to something. You don't need the garden stake, because, you know, you could anchor that into a pond basket, I guess, but you're really limited with what you can do. You're not going to go through your pond liner with a spike, so it's pretty useless for pond use. So supply a couple of these with a hole in the centre so that they can be mounted and screwed to something, and then the light can just be screwed directly onto it, and that would be really useful. But I think I'm going to remove, you've got a couple of stainless steel Allen screws on here as well at the base, and then you could actually screw that directly to something. So if I screw and raw plug that to a heavy stone like that, which is going to act as a nice anchor, I can position that exactly where I want to, I can angle the light exactly how I want, and that will illuminate and uplight that quite nicely. And the second light, again, I'll have it with its own little base at the bottom of the pond, illuminating something else. Tons and tons of cable. I'm just going to keep it neatly wrapped up like this and conceal the cable at the bottom of the pond. And as I say, it's very important that you remember to keep any blanking covers that you're not using, because if in the future you've got a faulty light or you need to remove it, you need to then make sure you blank that back over again and clamp that down so that it's still watertight. So I've just secured the light to a convenient piece of stone. I've got just a piece of York stone here. It's nice and heavy, it's going to keep it well anchored, it's not going to get knocked over, but it's still light enough that you can reach down into the pond and grab hold of that if you need to. And the light itself, the lens is, as I say, on a sort of pivoting, articulating joint, so I can choose the angle it's going to go. Obviously it can't go right up against the edge of the pond, so I'll probably end up angling it something like this and then just clamping that into position and giving that a test. Now, even though these are super duper bright, during the daytime, you're not really going to see an awful lot. So really, it does need to be kind of inspected at night time in the dark to really ensure that everything is set up correctly. That's one light. I'll do the same with the second light on a separate block for the other side of the pond. And I'm just drilling through. The lights themselves come with some fittings, a couple of raw plugs and some decent stainless steel hardware. So all you have to do is just drill a couple of holes. Even comes with an Allen key for the light fixings as well. Well, I'm nearing the end of this project. I've got a few finishing touches to do, a little bit of cleaning up, some final wire brushing on the stonework that I laid yesterday and around the pointing on top of the coping stones. We've replaced the grid. Initially I had some reservations about putting this back on actually. It always seems a bit of a shame to cover a pond and quite often spoils it. But in this instance I think this actually really improves the pond. It's a lovely grid, it's been well made. It allows the plants to grow through. It's got large enough grids that it allows the wildlife, dragonflies and frogs and various creatures to get in and out of the pond. It's easy to remove for maintenance. And I think it complements the wall and the stainless steel water blade quite nicely. So I'm pleased with that. So a couple of other jobs I want to do today. I want to give the pond a bit of a partial water change and a vacuum just to pick up some of the detritus and sediment and muck which has fallen in the pond inadvertently, despite trying to retain and catch any cement and muck that are kind of fallen in. There's always going to be a little bit that does. So I'm going to vacuum that up. A few rocks positioned behind the wall here just to shore up and hold up some of the soil. I've got a nice big stone here that I think might be quite a nice stepping stone, so that in the future when this area is planted up, there's still an area that can be kind of trodden on for easy access to get to the filtration system. So I'm going to try and partially bury that in the ground and see what that looks like. And then after that, the job is done. If you ever need to do any cleaning up of stonework like this, it's always best to do it within a day or two of laying the cement, because the cement's still soft enough to be removed with a wire brush. It's lovely working next to this. This water blade creates such a nice sound. Very soft, without being too sort of unnaturally gushing. I think sound is one of the most important aspects in ponds and water features, and tuning the sound of that feature to make sure it sounds natural and therapeutic rather than loud and irritating is very important. But this creates a lovely sound. Right, well that's it for the wire brushing. I think a little jet wash and that's clean, and I shall now start to vacuum the pond. So I've just been testing out the lighting. As I mentioned before, everything is being run through an Awaza FM Master. So this is a remote control fob that controls the two separate lights, one within the water blade and then the two spotlights that are in the pond, and then I can also turn on and off the water blade itself. So we've got an uplighter here which will illuminate behind the curtain and illuminate the stone. Now this is sat on the bottom of the pond. Usually I'd have this mounted on a stake attached to the side of the pond, much closer to the surface. But because it's quite a small pond, I didn't want to sort of overcrowd and outdo the light within the water blade itself, because these are pretty bright spotlights. Now the pond itself isn't crystal clear yet, so over the next few days when it clears, this light is going to become more and more prominent. But I can already see the ripples and the movement up here from the water, so that's going to look really, really nice at night time. The second light is based at this end of the pond, and again, when the pond is clear, that will just allow the surface of the pond to sort of glow in the evening light. The second light is the water blade light that fits at the top here. And again, at night time, that's going to illuminate this section of the spill here, so you sort of have an illuminated top section of water as it falls over. A little bit of cement there that I haven't cleaned off. There we go. But I think that's going to look very nice. Now, what's great about these Awasa FM Masters are that they don't need line of sight for the remote control to work. It works by transmitting on a radio frequency rather than kind of infrared. So it'll work through walls and it'll work up to a great distance. I think up to 100 metres, although personally I haven't tested it at that kind of distance. But yeah, you can have it in your pocket, you can use it in the house. Turn off the cascade, turn on the cascade, turn on your lights. So it's a very convenient piece of kit. It's not cheap, and in fact the lighting itself isn't cheap. And I have to say, when you're installing lighting with a pond, I think a remote control really goes hand in hand. Initially, it doesn't seem too much of a hardship to come outside and kind of manually turn on and off the lighting, but actually in reality, you quite often will enjoy your lighting during the colder evenings, in winter when it gets darker quicker, when it's wet and rainy, and you're not really going to want to go outside necessarily to turn your lights on or off. So very convenient to be able to do so remotely from inside the house or from a distance away from the pond. Well, herein lies the end of this project. It's a little bit of an overcast day to finish a job like this, but I think it shows off the lights perhaps better than they would do on a sunny day. They might need some final adjustments, and I'd like to pop back one day in the evening so I can really see the lights to their full effect and make some adjustments if they need it. It's been an interesting job, a little bit different from some of the normal ponds that I would build. It's quite nice to do something a bit more formal, a little bit more structural, and something which is moving away from the typical natural kind of cascades that I seem to do a lot of. I wasn't always a fan of these stainless steel water blades, a little bit too formal for me, but actually over the years I've warmed to them, and now I really quite enjoy installing them and using them on some of my projects. In fact, one of the next jobs that I hope to document is going to be the construction of my own pond in my garden, which I hope to film, and perhaps you guys will enjoy watching in the future. It's going to involve the use of 2 or 3 water blades and will be quite an intricate and quite an interesting build, so I'm looking forward to starting that one. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed watching me document this project. As always, I've enjoyed filming it. Thank you very much for viewing, and as always, thank you very much for subscribing. Without you guys, I wouldn't really be doing this, so you're the encouragement I need. Thank you. I'm Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next pond. I'll use, no I won't, that's a load of rubbish. Let me start again. The pond itself needs a little vacuum. I want to pick up some of the debris that has inadvertently fallen in. Ooh. It's quite a famous film. That's not a drill. This is. Hang on a minute.